So as I said in the last demo, we could potentially just stop here, because this is kind of a quick and dirty method to create this dynamic. It works. If we wanted to use it for our own purposes, that would be fine, but we really want to build something that looks like this. So let's talk about how to do that. So we already have some of the structure for building that final presentation already built. We have the chart and we have the checkboxes. So what we're going to do is we're going to move some of this over to a presentation layer, or at least a more distinct presentation layer, because that's how we expect people to interact with it when it's on a dashboard. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select this chart. I'll hit Control-C to copy it. I'm going to move it over to the presentation example over here. I'll just sort of move it up here to make it a little bit easier to look at. And so you may think that we could just do the same thing with these checkboxes. So let me show you what happens when we try that. I'm just going to hold Control and select all of these. I'll hit Control-C over here, bring them over here. And now as I interact with them, you see they kind of do something weird, don't they? They pop up over here. Now, why are they doing that? Well, when we made the link, so I'm going to hold Control, and I'm going to select Oceania, you see that it goes to I8, and it does so relative to the sheet. So what we need to do is actually reset these so that they point to the correct sheet. This can be a huge pain, but there are ways around it. One of the ways around it is to actually give the cells that they're referencing named ranges. And what that would allow you to do is actually just type in the named range up here instead of reconnecting it. But for our purposes, we'll just do it the manual way. I'm just going to reconnect that right here. I'll hit enter. Now we know that that was I8, so what I can do here is I'm going to just highlight this whole thing. I'll hit Control-C. I'm going to click Frionia here. Let me just unclick everything. I'm going to click Frionia. I'm going to just highlight this whole thing. We know it's I9, the record right under it. I'll hit OK. And then I'm going to hold Control, go back to West Cassidy for this one. We're going to go up to the formula bar. And remember, this one's going to be at I10. So I'll hit enter here. And then it's always a good idea just to test it. And we see it works. Perfect. So that's what we expect. I'll just delete these over here. Okay, so how do we make the lines disappear instead of going down? There's a few things that we can do. One of the things that we can do is make a value, instead of going to 0, we could make it go to -1. So that's kind of been an older way of doing it. We can make it go to -1, and then if we were over here, if I click Format Axis, you see that there's a minimum. We can make the minimum always 0. So if it went to some arbitrary negative number, it would go off the graph. But it would still have that kind of weird animation. So that older method worked very, very well with previous versions of Excel 2010 and earlier, but since they've added these animations, it's not really a preferred method anymore. So what we can do here is, whether we like it or not, the best thing to use is the if formula. As I said, if I turn this to, let's say, -1, it's going to go down, but we don't want it to display anything at all. So Excel has another way of telling a chart not to display anything, and that's with an NA error. So what we need to do is sort of generate our own errors. So here I can type in equals NA, I hit enter. You see that now Excel, over here on this chart, has actually removed the point. So what I want to test is, if it's showing, show the regular number, otherwise return an NA. So we'll use an if for that. So over here in cell B8, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write in equals if. So I'm going to select I8. Now remember, we don't have to say if I8 equals true. The condition is already true or false. That's what I8 is. So we don't need to deal with any of that. What we can do here is I can set this up as I did before. So I've selected I8. You can see I've hit F4 several times, such that the column I is absolute, but everything else is relative. So here I'll say I8 equals true. I don't have to type in equals true, because if it is true, it's going to return what's here. In that case, we're going to return cell B2. Otherwise, we want to generate an NA error. Now, the reason we can't do a multiplication, let's say true times NA, is that it doesn't matter if I8 or any other cell is being multiplied by NA. It always returns an NA error. So we need to create some sort of condition to prevent that NA from showing up. So I'm going to take that formula, I'll drag it to the right, I'll drag it down like I did before. So now if I click Oceania, you see it goes NA. If I click Frionia, it goes NA. Very similar. And because our chart is hooked up over here, we will find it actually has the same dynamic. Before moving forward on this chart, we want to do a little bit of cleanup. So here we have 1 through 7 down here. We do not like that. That is very tacky. So we actually would like the horizontal category axis to reflect a real year range. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that year range. I right-clicked, I hit select data, I went to edit, and then from the edit button, I selected the year range I was interested in. So I'm going to hit OK here. You can see that it fixed the year range. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the lines. I don't particularly like those. I'm going to actually delete, or I'm going to select this y-axis, and you saw that there is a line here, so I'm actually going to get rid of that because I don't particularly like that line. What I do like is having a soft box around it. So I'm going to click the plot area, and I'm going to select a soft gray. The reason I removed that line below is that it would have actually kind of made it thicker down there. Next, we're actually going to get rid of these here. We don't really need this legend because we're creating our own legend. So I'm just going to select it, hit delete. I don't really like how these data points are sort of floating with this buffer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this x-axis. I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to format axis. And then here where it says axis position, I'm going to click on tick mark. So that looks a lot better. Next thing I want to do, I don't really like how these numbers don't include a comma. That's tacky. So let's fix that before moving forward. So I've right clicked on the y-axis. I'm going to go to format axis. Here we have a series of axis options. I'm going to actually close this menu right here. Now, if you're using 2010 and earlier, you're going to look for the number group or the number tab. Here, it's going to be over on the context pane that Excel 2013 and newer uses. Under category, I'm going to select number. And remember, number always brings up 2 decimal places by default. I'm going to make that a 0. Now, you could even go smaller. You could turn these into like 12K if you wanted to. I have nothing against that. In fact, it's probably not even a bad idea. But here we're going to stop. The only thing I want to do is add a chart title because I think charts deserve a title. So I've clicked into the chart. I'm going to go to the Add Chart Element button from on the Design tab. If you have Excel 2010 and earlier, you're going to use the Layout tab. And I'm going to click Chart Title right here. We'll make it above the chart. And we'll add something kind of easy in here that tells us what's going on. So let's say total population by country. I'll hit enter here. I'm going to do an open parenthesis from 1994 to 2000. Close that parenthesis. Okay, and we'll just do just a little bit more reformatting. So here I'm going to click that chart title. We'll make that right aligned. I'm going to move the chart title over just a little bit. And we're going to actually do a little bit more formatting here in a second, but I kind of like getting this out of the way before anything else. So I'm going to change this to Seago UI Light, my favorite font. I'm going to select this one below it and just kind of make it a little bit smaller. Okay, so we're ready to start doing a little bit more of the legwork that's going to create these legends. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go with the chart selected. So really I need to select anything. It doesn't matter if it's a shape or a chart, but what we'll do is we'll select a chart here because it's the biggest thing and easiest thing to select. And it's going to pop up this Format tab over here. And then over here you see you have this Arrange group. So if I go to the Arrange group and I see a line right here and I click this drop down, there's a selection, Snap to Grid. So we're going to click that, and that's going to allow us to snap things to Excel's grid. So let's just use our grid as kind of our platform for design. And you'll see why this is kind of interesting to do in a second. But so now that I've snapped it, I can move this chart around. You see it kind of tries to fit within these cells. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of align this left corner to cell to the edge of A1 and B2. I'm going to drag this one over. This is the chart area. I'll drag it over to and then I'm going to drag this up. And what I really want is I want to have two sets of, or I should say, I want to have 6 cells down here. And I want them to sort of be in 2 sets each, right? So we have, here's one set, here's another set, and here's another. And I'll show you why that's important in a second. So to line things up, I'm going to actually sort of stretch this chart, and then I'm going to click within the plot area, and I'm going to line up the plot area with that cell area, kind of like that. And if I wanted to, I can make this taller. Okay, but so what I really want to point out is I have this set of 6 cells right here, and we're going to use those. So I'm going to make them just a little bit bigger here. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to select this first set, and I'm going to click Merge and Center. And then I'm going to select this second set. I'll hit Merge and Center here. I'll select this third set, Merge and Center here. So if I click this Presentation Final, you see that I've actually kind of done that here. Okay, so let's go back. So this first one, we want it to say Oceania. Now, before we typed in the name Oceania, but we're not going to do that this time because we want it to be linked to the back end. So here I'm going to type in equals, and I'm going to go to the data example, and I'm going to just select Oceania right here. I'll hit enter. I'm going to do the same here in cell D14. Go to the data example. I'm going to select Frjonia right here. And then finally on this last one, I bet you can guess what I'm going to do. I'm going to select West Cassidy. So if it changes back here, it's going to change over here. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is a little formatting. So these are, by default with the Merge and Center, they're going to be centered. But I don't really want it to be centered. I want it to be sort of aligned in the middle. And I'm going to make this left align. And you'll see why I do that. So instead of stopping right here, I'm going to push this 3 ahead like that. So it kind of looks like it's in the center. But it gives me a little bit more predictability when I place these check marks. So here we have Oceania. That's the first one. So what I'm going to do is actually place this check mark into here. So I no longer need the name, so I'll control click on the check mark. I'm going to get rid of that name. So I can hold shift and hit down, that selects everything, or you can just do backspace or delete, anything like that. So now we have this really long checkbox. And I really want it to be over here on Oceania. So what I can do is I can hold control and I can sort of drag it on top like this. So this is why we moved everything over, but we didn't center. Because if we centered, we wouldn't have the same sort of ability to move the text. If we centered, this West Cassidy might go to the next line. It's a little bit easier to do a left align and then to use the indents to figure out where that checkbox is going to be. So the checkbox by default is on the right. And what we can do here is I'm going to take this anchor and I'm just going to drag it up, and I'm going to try to snap it to the grid, to the cells, this merge cell holding Oceania, as much as I can. So you can see that now when I go to click on this legend, it's going to bring up the finger because the entire cell range is covered. So I can click over here and it's going to work, and I can click over here. I don't necessarily need to click on the checkbox. And as you can imagine, I'll hold control and I'm going to do the same thing for these other ones. So I'll put this right here. We'll get rid of the text inside, hit delete. And now it's just a matter of sizing everything. So I'll hold control over here. I'll move this over here. We'll hit delete for what's in here. Click out. Hold control to select it again and just take the anchors. Make sure you use every center anchor, even if it already looks kind of lined up. This just makes sure that it's always snapped. So let's say I wanted to increase the size of this. Let's just take that off. If I want to increase the size of this, it will always sort of snap like so. So the next thing that we need to do is line up the colors. So we know Oceania is kind of this or is this blue, and we know Frjonia is this orange, this burnt orange, and we know West Cassidy is this gray. The cool thing is the way Excel works is that it often kind of goes in the order of its theme colors. So that first Oceania is this one right here. The orange is this one right here. The gray one is this one right here. So that makes things very easy for us. Now we have this issue because if I want to go edit what's in Oceania, if I go select it, I can't. So there's a few ways around that, and we'll talk about it in the maintenance part. For now, what we're going to do is move our cursor. So if I just select anywhere, I can use my arrow keys like this. So just use your arrow keys. This allows us to select the whole thing. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to select that blue. We'll start right here. Let's make it bold. Use my arrow keys and go over to the right. I can go from this drop down here, select that burnt orange, hit bold, use arrow keys again, go over to the right, select the color that we need, which is going to be this gray right here, kind of make it bold just to make it stand out, and there we go. So let's just do a little finishing touches on this. We're going to go to view. I'm going to select grid lines because I don't really like the grid lines. And now as I look at this chart, I don't even really like this border right here because I like things to be seamless. So I'll select the chart. I'll go over to the design tab, or I should say the format tab under shape outline. We're going to just click no outline. And then finally, we probably want to have kind of a little border around this. So I'll select this. Again, we have to use the cursor, so I can start here on B14, hold shift, hit right again, selects the whole thing. From here, I'm going to select the line color that I like. Usually it's one of these grays over on the right. I can draw it like this, and then I'll hold control. Now if you draw with the pencil tool and you hold control, that means fill in the borders inside too. Let go, hit escape just to get out of it, and here we go.